In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to John from Buro Happold. John holds the role as head of HR for the US region for a global company. Hence, he works very closely together with their global head office in the UK. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to our latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today. John, it's great to have you on.
Yep, thank you. Nice to be here.
John, can you tell us in a few sentences, who are you? What do you do?
Yep, so I'm John Piombino. I am principal and the head of HR for the US region at Buro Happold. Buro Happold is a global engineering advisory firm. We're headquartered in Bath in the UK. But we do have a number of different regions, and here in the US, we have 400 staff members and growing. I'm based out of our New York office, which is our largest office in the region, but I have a team under me that's spread out between New York and our office on the West Coast in Los Angeles.
John, can you tell us a bit more about your job? So why did you choose becoming a leader in the HR space?
Yeah, so I got into HR by accident, really. And back when I did it over 25 years ago, I don't think a lot of people or a lot of schools had majors in HR, or people kind of said they were going to go into HR. I think I joined when HR was kind of in a turning point, going from what they used to call personnel to becoming HR and evolving into more of what it is today, which is more of a strategic business partner type role. When I got into it again, I got into it through recruiting. I went to college. I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher until I did some student teaching and realized I loved the theory behind it, but didn't really love the standing up in front of a high school class as much. So I was looking. Yeah.
So as a teacher, you're the only person in the room that's passionate about the topic, probably.
Yeah, standing in front of a lot of teenage kids is not as much fun as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it was it was something. I think there are things that I take from that experience, right? About working with people and really again around even learning and development, and those are areas that I'm still passionate about today. But I was, after deciding I didn't want to become a teacher, I was then looking for a career opportunity, and I kind of came across an opportunity to do recruiting. It was at a temporary agency, and it was placing temporary employees into temporary positions. And that's where it started. And I really enjoyed the interviewing, the meeting people, the interacting with different companies, understanding about what their talent needs were, and trying to find the right match for them for a period of time, and then utilizing those relationships to build upon future business and give future opportunity to the candidates. And a lot of the candidates did come in as temps and became regular full-time staff. So that was always rewarding. So that's where my career started. And then after doing temporary placement, I stayed on the agency side and did some full-time placements, mostly placing college grads or administrative staff. So I did that for a while, and when you're on the agency side, there's also a certain amount of sales that you're doing. So you have to call up and find clients, and it became less about kind of the part that I enjoyed, which was the placing people into positions and kind of hearing about their success stories. It became a little bit more about the sales, right? You had to have the clients and find the opportunities, and that wasn't as much fun. Even though I was successful at it to a certain degree, it was challenging because there are a lot of agencies out there. You're competing for a lot of business, and it's a lot of cold calling. And for some people, that motivates them, and that's great. And I have colleagues from that job that I'm still in touch with that have been doing that type of work for over 30 years. But for me personally, I really started to gravitate towards the clients, and I was
Mhm.
more interested in what they were doing on the HR side of the world. So I said, this may be a sign that maybe it's time to look what's on the HR side, and the easiest way at that time to get into the HR side for me was on the recruiting side because I already had a number of years of experience doing agency type recruitment. But in back in that day, a lot of companies weren't interested in people who came from the agency side of
Mhm.
recruiting to come onto the corporate side of recruiting. They kind of like people that were more, I'll call it like homegrown, right? Started maybe
Mhm.
as a recruiting coordinator or an HR coordinator, and then kind of moved up. So it took me a little bit of time to break in to an organization that was open to somebody with an agency recruiting background. But once I got in, I never looked back, and I continued on kind of the recruiting talent acquisition side for a number of years at a couple of different firms. And, it was really exciting. I really enjoyed working with people and, again, not only being able to place them into roles, but then work with them and kind of watch
Mhm.
them evolve and work with
Right.
them maybe as hiring managers in the future and really kind of have continuous interaction with them. But then, after so many years, you get to a point where I wanted something more, and I was starting to get really a lot more interested as I said earlier, HR was evolving into kind of more of that business
Mhm.
partner type role. So I was really becoming more intrigued by what some of my colleagues that were on that side of the business were doing.
Mhm.
So I started asking a lot of questions, taking a lot of notes, meeting with a lot of different people, and trying to learn more. Um, and again, it was at that time a difficult switch to move from the talent acquisition side over to the business partner side. A lot of companies almost held their talent acquisition, even though they were kind of under the HR umbrella, they really didn't consider them HR.
Mhm.
So that was my second challenge, right? That I wanted to kind of break into that HR side, even though I kind of always thought or felt I was in HR. So I found an opportunity, another firm that gave me that opportunity to kind of become more of a business partner, and it was doing a true generalist role. So it was nice. I was
Mhm.
able to still do a little bit of recruiting, but I was starting to evolve and do more employee relations type work and business partner work, and get more involved in things like around employee engagement and benefits and things that you just didn't touch. As much when you're just doing strictly recruiting, just because there's just not enough time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I kind of continued down that path and changed firms again, got some more experience in becoming an HR generalist, an HR manager, an HR business partner as kind of the terms evolved. And my last firm I was at for 11 years. So my career really evolved there, and there were a lot of challenges. That firm was in growth mode pretty much from the time that I was there. Um, but there was an opportunity then to join a competitor to lead an HR department, and that was something I didn't think I was going to get the opportunity to kind of lead a regional HR team where I was. So this was a nice kind of step in that direction. I've been here now at Buro Happold for 5 years, and had a lot of growth in that area in kind of this role as well, managing a regional team, which has been really amazing. Something I hadn't done before. I had only managed locally. So I've gotten a lot of great experience here. I have a really good team, and yeah, that's where I am career-wise today, and how I got here. I didn't start the traditional kind of HR coordinator to kind of growth to where I am now. Kind of took a lot of twists and turns, I guess, along the way.
Cool. I have so many follow-up questions. So, first of all, I want to ask you, so this first turn from an agency entering into the world of corporate, entering the world of your clients, you talked about, okay, it wasn't easy back then. I kind of said there were like a number of rejections, and well, it's like, hey, seriously looking for different kind of profile. How did you motivate yourself to keep on doing what you wanted to do despite all, well, the setbacks that, well, tell us whether there were really setbacks, but it
Yeah.
sounded a bit like.
Yeah, no, there definitely were. I went on a lot of interviews where, I didn't get the job, and I was told they were looking for somebody with more of an HR background, right?
And
S-
it is probably also something when you interview so much on the other side, it's probably also strange to be then in the position of, well, not the one that rejects, but the one who is rejected.
Yeah, going from the interviewer to the interviewee, right? It's psychologically, it's sometimes it is difficult because you're overthinking basically, right? What's going on in the process. So yeah, that is a challenge, and I still had that up even up until my most recent job when I interviewed, right? You do overthink it because you know too much, and you know a lot of behind the scenes and how decisions are made, and sometimes why decisions are made and there's not always a good reason behind every decision is what you learn, but yeah, it was challenging, so because people just wanted more of that corporate HR experience is what I was finding at the time. They didn't see the I guess the value of working from an agency perspective, which I thought was really, you know, gave me an advantage, right? Because I really knew how to recruit. I needed to fill positions, right? I didn't get paid unless I placed people into jobs. So you learn a lot and you have to learn pretty quickly. Um, but I did speak to a lot of my clients at the time to kind of find out, what was it that was the missing piece and that kind of corporate piece that people were looking for. So, again, I talked to a lot of people, asked a lot of questions and tried to learn a lot from them and then tried to kind of present myself maybe a little bit differently in some of the interviews and maybe take off, I think what people felt about recruiting at the time, right? That it was a little bit edgier. I wanted to kind of soften that, make it show that I could fit in a corporate environment. I could work, within the politics of a corporation that sometimes don't exist on the agency side because they're usually smaller type businesses. And then you just had to find the right company, right? It's just sometimes it's just a numbers game. You have to continue to interview until you find that right fit. And luckily, I found a firm that was willing to take a chance on somebody that came from outside of the agency, from the agency and didn't grow up in a corporate environment. And yeah, and I'm very thankful for that opportunity because I wouldn't be here if I didn't get that first chance.
What I also find super interesting is something you mentioned in your development, when you elaborate about your development to becoming a business partner. So from the recruiting towards the business partner side, we're hearing that a lot in our podcast, and I always find the different perspectives so amazing, given it kind of shows the elevated importance of HR in general in today's world. Can you tell us a bit more about the kind of steps you took to make sure, hey, we are an equal partner and we are not just a delivery function or a cost center, but we are one of the most important parts of the company?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You said it perfectly, right? I think recruiting is so important, and I think it's the education that you get in recruiting is really invaluable. You learn so much about the organization. You learn so much from the hiring managers about their business and about the positions they're trying to fill and how that fits into the organization and the different levels of the firm. And you just get such a deep and intimate understanding that I just don't think even today you don't get the same as a business partner. So I always feel that people coming out of recruiting and want to get into the business partner role have actually an advantage over maybe somebody who had just been an HR coordinator and was kind of just growing into that business role kind of career path. But so again, you have it's all about how you kind of have to sell yourself, right? And you learn. I was again talking to a lot of people who are on the business partner side to kind of understand, what were they opposed to of kind of from a recruiting perspective of having somebody come over to the business partner side and then try and tell people how I, whatever it may have been, how I did deal with those issues. And I remember one of the challenges with people like, well, you don't really deal with employee relations type issues. And I had to kind of tell them, well, that's not really true, because a lot of times when you do hire somebody as a recruiter in a company and they're not happy or they're having an issue, the person they come back to is the recruiter, because they know you hired them, right? You worked with them sometimes for over a month or longer through a process to get them hired, and they feel comfortable with you. So, they would come to me and they would talk to me about some of the challenges they were having, or how they felt that the job was maybe sold differently. And I would try and work with them to kind of figure out a way. Uh, Unfortunately, when you're in a recruiting role, there's only so far you can take it, right? Because you have jobs to fill and you can't spend too much time, counseling people. But I kind of, took that experience, and it helped me kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. But I think it also helped me start to figure out how to help people before I had to pass them on to maybe the business partner or the employee relations leader, and tell them, this is the issue and they have to deal with it. But again, it was just finding those opportunities that you don't even think of, because when you're doing recruiting, you're not just doing recruiting all day long, right? You're interacting with people. If you're a good recruiter, you're kind of understanding the organization. You're trying to figure out and learn more about people and what the right fit is. So I think that is just, again, an invaluable experience to move into a business partner role. I think you have a deeper knowledge. Now, not every recruiter wants to be a business partner, and that's fine, right? If some people just want a career in recruiting, that's great, and it could be a great career. But those who do, I think companies should be open to looking at those folks. And I know when I'm hiring for opportunities in my team, I would definitely be open to somebody like that, and I would also be open to somebody who's on an agency side who wants a talent acquisition in a corporation, because I do feel they have an advantage, because they had to really work hard to find candidates and to sell and to close roles. And I think that type of experience you don't get on the corporate side. And my experience working with recruiters who have kind of grown up just in the corporate environment versus recruiters who have grown up in an agency requirement or environment is that agency recruiters are a lot more resourceful, and they they really know how to make something out of nothing and really find candidates, and they're a lot quicker to fill positions sometimes than corporate recruiters, who kind of sometimes get stuck up or slowed down, maybe I should say, in some of the politics that go on within the corporate world.
You just mentioned, okay, you're going for decisions. Your decision making is different than those with a rather traditional career. I think that also plays very well into like the diversity of ideas or the diversity of background, right? So the great strength that nowadays it's no longer managers who had a very clear path, a very strict path, but it's more like, okay, people from different perspectives or from different backgrounds with different perspectives, who then can bring in something, very unique to the organization, that you, also look at people in a comprehensive manner.
Yeah. And I think the business partner role is really true to that, right? Because business partner is such a broad term. And you can have business partners that are really good on maybe the employee relations side or the employee engagement side. And you can have other business partners that are really good on the benefits side, or really good on the learning and development side, right? So you really have to kind of figure out, when you do have an opening for a business partner, is, what are you trying to fill? What do you need? Because business partner is such a broad term. There's a lot of different flavors under that category. So yeah, the diversity of experience, and again, I think that just speaks to how HR as a career has grown. I don't think that, back when I first started, I even realized that all these different aspects of HR existed, and they continue to grow. I think after COVID, right, there's been a lot more focus on things that I never really got involved in as much as an HR professional, like around employee wellness. You know, uh, Again, like that was something that we didn't really think of, and about things like hybrid work, right? It just wasn't, you had a couple of people that maybe did that or had flexible working schedules, but everybody was expected to be in the office 5 days a week. And when people didn't want to go in, that was a new challenge that I had never experienced. So there are still things that that come across my desk or come into the HR team that they're dealing with, that 5, 10 years ago, I would have never thought would have been part of what an HR leader gets involved in. So it continues to evolve and grow, and I guess that's what makes it exciting, but it it also makes it challenging, and you're able to pull from past experiences sometimes in situations that you're familiar with, but when you have these new situations, there's really nothing to pull from the past, so you kind of have to almost figure things out as you go along, and do a lot of interacting and networking with other leaders in the firm, and try and figure out what's the right thing for our staff, what's the right thing for our company, and kind of walk that thin line. That's another thing with HR, right? Because people would say, well, are you HR because you favor the people, or are you an HR person who always just takes the company side, right? And I don't think there is, you can't be one way or the other, right? It depends on the situation, and it's a very kind of thin line that you have to walk. You want to be an employee advocate, but you also have to kind of advocate for the firm, and protect the firm as well. So it every situation is different. It's hard just to kind of put a general theme across, what type of HR person are you?
What do you think are the most important skills an HR business partner should have? So perhaps I can share from my perspective. I think it's also it's mainly curiosity for the people I work with. Or I remember one of the first business partners I worked with. She was absolutely incredible because she was basically like every day, several times on the trading floor, talking to people. And I must say that impressed me a lot back then, given she really knew people, really knew what's going on, and really knew where to help, which was absolutely incredible as a very young junior, that there was someone who had a different perspective than the actual guys from the business side, however, was very knowledgeable how to support.
Yeah, I think the most successful HR people that I've seen on the business partner side are people that are out there networking, speaking with people, learning about their business, what they do, how they do it, the types of people they have within their organization, understanding what their pressure points are, understanding, what it means when things are good, what it means when things aren't so good, right? So it's that constant communicating. The people that I have, maybe not the strongest HR people, are the people who just kind of sit behind their desk a lot and aren't really interacting with people. Maybe they're just answering emails, or they're entering data into the system. But this is where I think, like you said, at any level in HR, you can have that curiosity and get out and meet people. You can be the new HR coordinator, in the first year of your career. And there's no reason why you can't take that opportunity to meet people, and, managers in the organization, leaders in the organization, and understand more about the firm and what they do, and how they make money, right? How they make profit. I think that's an important thing. Sometimes we also forget about in HR, right? Because we get so focused on the people issues and the organization, but it is a business, right? And we're a strategic partner, and we have to understand how this firm makes money, how they lose money, and how we can make sure that when things are going well, we're there to support them, but when things maybe aren't so well, what we also need to do to support the business.
I think what you just said is obviously super important, right? So the many HR functions are kind of reactive and not that proactive. How can you ensure that your team is as proactive as possible?
Yeah, again, a lot of meetings with people, right? So, I do team meetings, I have one-on-one individual meetings, right? I like to kind of find out what's going well for my team, where their challenges are, and then we talk about kind of the business. And I've been in professional services for many years now, so I find it's a little bit easier to understand a professional services business and how professional services businesses make money. So I worked, for some very large or global organizations in the past. It wasn't always as clear cut how they made money or how things were done, but you just have to keep on asking questions.
So asking questions and then also triggering responses, giving honest answers, asking honest questions. How do you empower people to do this?
I tell them we're in HR. There's nothing that we could break, right? We're not we're not like a surgeon where we're not gonna kill
Right.
anybody, right? Like there's
So,
nothing that, we can't undo or change or learn from, right? We're gonna make mistakes. Some may be worse than others, but we can always go back and figure out a way to fix it or make it better. So it's okay to ask questions. It's okay if you make a mistake, right? You have to kind of feel comfortable in what you do and be yourself. And I think that's really the best way to relate to people. If you're not comfortable or you're not curious or you're always afraid you're going to do something wrong or you're going to get yelled at or, it's hard to really be your best and do your best. So, um, you try and build those relationships, but there are tough people out there and there are tough hiring managers, there are tough line managers, and you're not going to build that relationship as strong with everybody, but you try and at least find that point where you can work together and help them or show them that you help them. And there have been a number of people that I've worked with at first where I was like, ooh, this person's tough. I don't know how this is going to work. But I kept on trying to kind of prove myself that I was able to help solve their problem or help them point them in the right direction. And some of those people that at first I didn't think I was going to get along with became some of my most successful HR relationships with the business. So you just never know.
Indeed, but can you tell us a bit about what you guys do as a professional service firm in engineering? So how can I picture what you guys do?
Yeah, so engineering, we're basically doing building engineering, right? Because engineering is a pretty broad term.
Indeed.
So it's basically engineering for what we'd say like the built environment, right? And a lot of where we specialize, a lot of the folks that we have, the staff that we have, they're basically in a trade, right? They went to school for this. This is something they knew they wanted to do. They're a structural engineer, they're an electrical engineer, they're a mechanical engineer. There's not a lot of crossover, right? So once you become a structural engineer, you go 5 years into your career and you're like, oh, I really like what the electrical team is doing. I'd like to become part of that, right? That doesn't happen because you kind of have chosen your career and then you can kind of grow from there.
Yeah,
Which I
you
think,
don't you don't want to live in a building that's constructed by someone who studied biology, perhaps, right?
right, exactly right. So, I think in a way it's very easy to understand the business for that reason because people are in very specialized areas. But as the business continues to grow, we're now growing into an advisory space, right? And that's different. That's more about consulting, and that's not an area that, people kind of go into school like with a trade, so to speak, right? It's a lot broader and it's around things like around sustainability, which is again like a very broad term. So, the business is changing. Engineering is still an important part of the business, but advisory is starting to grow, and that's something that we're learning about as we go. And again, kind of learning about it the same way as you were saying before. Some of the people that we're hiring, the leaders, the new people, just sitting with them, kind of understanding their backgrounds, their business, what they're doing, what they're trying to do, where they came from. That's really been helpful. But yeah, I would say if you're in a career in HR, you're always learning. And every time I say I think I've seen it all, I'm always proved wrong because something else that I've never seen or never experienced always seems to come my way.
Okay, John, tell us more about this shift. So, hiring traditional engineers. I don't want to speak in stereotypes or anything, but I think it's probably fair to say that some people choose the subject in business because they wanted to stand in front of people, presenting cases, advising, consulting. Many people in engineering probably choose not to go in, not to choose a subject like business because they enjoyed working on details and not standing in front of big crowds. And as I said, so I hate to speak in stereotypes here, but perhaps to simplify things a bit.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There are, a lot of engineering and the business itself is very academic, right?
Yeah.
Because people kind of get into it and they're great at what they do, but they think of it more from a technical perspective, and they don't think of it from a business perspective or a profit and loss perspective.
But nowadays you then need, as you just said, you need those people who are very technical, however, who also enjoy doing consultancy work. And how do you change as an organization in HR to facilitate that?
Yeah, well, it starts again with the recruiting, right? We have to find the right people with the right experience, the right backgrounds, and that have an interest in kind of taking their career in that way. And there are, not to be stereotypical, right? We were saying before, but there are a lot of engineers that do enjoy kind of the advisory work and interacting with clients and kind of doing business development. And then there are others that don't. So you do have to kind of, and this is something that we're continuously working on, but creating kind of career frameworks for different people. If you do want just to be a technical expert, is there a career for you where you can continue to learn and grow in that area? But if you want to branch out and you want to focus more on business development, that's an area too. Or I would say a third area that I like to kind of break it into three areas. It's project management, right? Or being a project director and leading projects. That's another skill set that's a little bit different. It's great for people to have a little bit of everything, right? That's what makes a really good leader. But the reality is that's a lot to ask for one person to be super technical, a great project manager, great people leader, and a great business development, right? Salesperson, right? Not all three of those skills are always encompassed in one person.
Indeed. And I was wondering, how did your communication change when this change in business model was apparent?
Well, we're still going through it right now, right? And it's really it's just a change in kind of growth, and there's a lot of change management going on, and we're trying to do our best to communicate that as a business, and we're finding, trying to understand what are the best ways to communicate that. And sometimes, there are times we feel like we don't have enough avenues of communication, and then there's sometimes where we feel there's so many different avenues of communication, we don't know where people are going to, right? It's even just like, are people communicating in or reading emails? Are they more likely to read a Teams message? Is it better to put it in a newsletter, or is it better to do it in a town hall type of environment, right? So we're still kind of experimenting with all these different ways to communicate with the staff about the changes, and also making sure that they have a say, right? It's really important to staff. People really want to be more involved. And again, this is how I've just seen kind of the work world kind of change, right? It used to be when I first started in HR, is if HR said that was the way, then that was the way, right? And people just kind of followed rules. People don't want to follow rules anymore. Nobody wants to hear, oh, it's just because of HR. They want to understand kind of how that decision was made. What say did they have in that? How did they have an opportunity to kind of have influence in that? And that doesn't only go at like people in middle of their career. People in early in their career want to make sure that they somehow have some type of say or influence, all the way up to more senior in their career. So that's definitely something I've seen change within business, and I think also within HR, and also becoming more empathetic is something. I don't think empathy was a word when I first started in HR that I ever heard, but I definitely feel like I hear it at least 3 to 4 times a day now. So yeah, the world has changed.
How did that first appear to be, well, to show them empathy? So that's well, it's a quite a move, right?
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because earlier in my career, there were, I would say empathetic people in HR, right? And there were people in HR that got in and, wanted to help counsel people, and I'll never forget. I remember somebody, an HR leader, coming to me once and saying, the role of HR isn't to be, a counselor or a psychologist. It's a business role, right? And you need to kind of look at it from that end. And I was like, okay, well, wow, that's a little bit different, because I kind of like the kind of the counseling part, and then, so I think with everything else, it's about finding the right balance. I think there's, yes, it's a business, but yes, I think there's a part where you could be empathetic and you could still kind of work with people and counsel and coach people. And so it's a little bit of everything, and it's just the balance. But it definitely sometimes, the pendulum kind of swings in different ways. And definitely during COVID, I think it was more about the empathy piece. And I think, there are other times maybe before COVID where it was more about the business side. And now I think it's about maybe finding that balance.
Well, as an engineering company, it's, well, what you guys do, what kind of people you bring into the organization is very essential, right? So compared to companies that can also rely on machinery or anything that well, that they can also produce. So the only thing that can produce at an engineering firm while doing the consultancy, well, it's people, right?
That's it. Yeah, we're not producing like widgets or a product, right? It's the people, and the people are the business. So, there are times if you don't have the right people, that you may not be able to take on a project because you don't have that skill set to be able to do that project. So, and also as you want to grow the business, you have to bring in people with different skill sets in the areas that you do want the business to grow in. So, it does kind of always come back to, like we were saying earlier, kind of the talent acquisition and the recruiting. And it does really start a lot of times there.
How does it feel to be in such an important role within the firm? So that well, as you said, so if you don't have the right people at the right time, you won't be able to take up a project, and those people who ask for your consultancy work in the first place will probably not ask you again if you rejected several times on the grounds of, well, don't have enough people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a really essential part of the business. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're lucky we're a global firm. So, sometimes if we don't have the right talent in the US, we may have that talent somewhere else in the world, right? It may be somewhere in the UK or in Europe. So I think that's really important and really a great part of being part of a global company is kind of the work share that goes on behind the scenes, and it also kind of opens up another area that we get involved in HR, which is around global mobility and people that sometimes will come on assignments because there's a certain project and they have a certain skill set, so they may come from London to New York and work on this project for 3 months or sometimes 3 years, and then they decide to stay, or maybe they go back home. So I think that's a really exciting part of being part of a global company that not many firms can offer that are more regional, but also the sharing of work. So you don't even have to go anywhere, right? You can kind of hand a project off and say we need some help, and that group in that location works on it, and then they kind of bring it back, and it's a very a much more efficient way of kind of sharing work and making sure that we don't let our clients down, and we have the right talent, and if we can't find that talent in one place of the world, we can look for it and hire it and find it in somewhere else, and then share that work. So last couple of firms I've worked at have been global firms, and yeah, I think it would be hard for me to go back and work for a regional firm. It would be very different being used to kind of this global environment and global exposure.
How has COVID changed this so that you can also easily take up a job? Well, that's well, you serve a US client from Europe, so just work remote, work well, slightly different hours, but well, just get up early, get up later, go to bed later.
Yeah, I think uh, with the technology during COVID has really kind of enhanced that work sharing, that you can share projects and work all over the world. There still is a need for people to speak to each other and to get together and to meet. And, a lot of that can be done online, but I think there's also opportunity for what we kind of call business trips, right? Somebody can even kind of come out to a location for a couple of weeks or a month or so and kind of really get to understand the project and then go back to their home location and continue the work on it there. But yeah, I think mobility has definitely changed with COVID. There's less of a need. Mobility is quite expensive, right? It's a big business expense. So, I think it has helped kind of with COVID and the new technology and the new ways of sharing work has kind of reduced the need maybe for as much mobility as we saw in the past. But I think there are still opportunities for it, and we're just more selective because I kind of look at it as an investment, right? I don't look at mobility as a cost, but as an investment. And it there's parts of it that the return on investment you can't always quantify, because there's sometimes just sharing when you're in a global company, kind of the way of working and doing things and the relationships that are hard to put like a dollar amount on, but are really invaluable to the business and the people's motivation and retention. If they get these opportunities, they do seem to stay longer than people who maybe don't. So it's just, again, another thing that that has evolved. I think mobility is still a great thing, both globally and as well as regionally. But we just have to be careful and pick our spots because of the costs that are involved, and also the challenges around immigration and taxes also play a part in mobility. So we have to make sure we have the right people, kind of third-party providers helping us when we do have people go on assignments in different parts of the world, because those tax and immigration pieces are really important.
Indeed, yeah. When it comes to tax, one should be indeed careful. John, can you tell us a bit more about what you think will be the big trends in HR and also in recruiting in the next few years?
Yep. I think retention is going to continue to be a big part. I think people, job satisfaction, right? People being happy in what they're doing. It feels like every survey that I read lately, kind of on the outside, is that a lot of people aren't happy in their role, or a lot of people are always looking for the next opportunity. So I do think engagement is going to continue to be an important topic, and burnout is the other area, right? I think is going to be important, because we're always businesses are looking to do more sometimes with less people. So making sure that we do have the right amount of people for the work that we have to get done, and the work that we want to do. That's also a balance that we have to find. But I think HR can do a lot to help leadership in those areas, to help line managers in those areas, because also when we talk about retention, people don't always leave the job. They leave their line manager. We've heard that right a million times before, and we've heard it because it's true. Yeah, exactly. So so how do we make sure people are better line managers? How do we make sure they're getting the training that they need, and that they have the skills that they need to be able to not only do their day job, but also do the job of a line manager? And does everybody have to be a line manager, right? And maybe some people aren't cut out for it, and that's okay. And we want to make sure that we have, again, we're going back to career tracks, right? Earlier in my career, I remember you in order to get ahead, you had to be a line manager in order to do, even if you were a bad line manager or you didn't want to be one, right? Like now, maybe you don't need to be a line manager in order to grow in your own career, right? It's not and shouldn't be a necessary step to growth, because not everybody wants to do it. Not everybody's good at it. So I think all these things are things that will continue to be important. I hear a lot about AI, right? We're going to be trying to figure more about how that is going to help us as we go forward in HR. I think we've only seen really the tip of the iceberg there. So so it's a lot of exciting stuff. I think it's a great career, and like I said, there's so many different parts of it. So I think if it is something you're interested in, you have to really kind of understand what part of it that you're really excited about, because you can really take an opportunity to specialize in that, or you can have the opportunity to kind of do something that's a little bit more generalist and touch on a lot of different areas. So there's something for everybody.
Well, John, thank you so much for being part of our podcast. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Benjamin. I really appreciate it. Nice meeting you, and great to be here.
And all of you guys, thanks a lot for listening in, and see you next time.